I don't know what scared me more, that my car wouldn't start, or that deep down, I already knew no one was coming. I twisted the key again, harder this time, as if sheer force could will the engine back to life. The starter coughed, wheezed, and then fell silent, leaving me stranded in the middle of nowhere, my only company the blinking red light of my nearly dead phone. I slammed my palm against the wheel. Damn it, Rachel. She was supposed to be here. She promised. Pick me up after work. Simple. But Rachel and promises never mixed well. I should have known better. I checked the time. 1:27 a.m. Almost an hour late. No calls. No texts. The last time I heard from her was a half-hearted, "Be there soon," at 12:15. I hit dial again. Straight to voicemail. Rachel, where the hell are you? My car's dead. Call me back. The cold settled in, biting through my jacket. The silence felt thick, unnatural. I turned, scanning the road, but it was nothing but blackness in both directions. No headlights. No sound of an approaching engine. Just the rustling of cornstalks in the field beside me, the distant howl of a coyote, and the faint, eerie wail of a train cutting through the night. I swallowed the rising frustration in my throat. She's coming. She has to. Something flickered in the distance. Headlights. Relief flooded my chest as I stepped out, waving an arm. The car slowed, its bright beams making me squint. A silver sedan. Not Rachel's beater of a Jeep, but maybe she borrowed someone's car? The driver didn't stop. I staggered back as the car lurched toward me, its tires skidding as it veered dangerously close to the shoulder. My breath caught as I stumbled out of the way, heart hammering in my chest. The car sped past, and for a split second, I caught a glimpse of the driver's face. Wild eyes, mouth open like he was yelling something. Then, just as fast, the car disappeared into the night. I stood frozen, the adrenaline still buzzing in my limbs. That wasn't just someone driving reckless. That was intentional. What the hell was that? I turned back toward my car, pulse racing, suddenly all too aware of how alone I really was. The phone in my hand vibrated once. A single notification. Unknown number. Don't wait. Get moving. My stomach dropped. My fingers hovered over the screen. No name. No context. I swiped to call back. Dead battery. I spun toward the road again, scanning the darkness. No taillights. No sign of the car. Who sent that? How did they know I was here? A cold sweat broke across my skin. The train's wail cut through the night again, louder this time. Closer. I looked at my car. Useless. Dead. No longer safe. Then I looked down the road, toward town. The headlights were gone. The road was empty again. But suddenly, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't waiting anymore. I started walking. I kept walking, forcing my feet forward even as my mind spun. The road stretched endlessly ahead, and my breath came in short, controlled exhales. My car was dead. My phone was dead. Rachel wasn't coming. Someone had just tried to run me off the road, and now I had a message from a number I didn't recognize telling me to get moving. Every instinct told me to turn around, to go back, to get inside the car and lock the doors, but I wasn't about to sit in that dark, empty metal box waiting for whatever the hell was going on to get worse. The silence felt heavier now, like something was pressing in from all sides. The road was too quiet. The wind had died down, and even the crickets seemed to have stopped their endless humming. The train was gone, its presence now just a lingering echo in the distance. I tried to focus on the sound of my boots hitting the pavement, the steady rhythm of movement, the one thing I could control. But then, footsteps. I stopped. The sound stopped too. My fingers twitched at my sides as I turned my head, scanning the darkness behind me. Nothing but empty road and open fields. I swallowed, listening, holding my breath, waiting to hear it again. Maybe it was just my own steps echoing off something. Maybe my mind was playing tricks. I took another step. Silence. Another. Then, behind me, a footstep that wasn't mine. I spun, my heart hammering, but there was no one there. Nothing but blackened cornfields stretching into the night. I took a step backward, then another, my pulse pounding against my skin. I wasn't imagining it. Someone was out there. Then, in the distance, a phone screen lit up. It was far, maybe 30, 40 yards away, barely visible through the gaps in the cornstalks. The light glowed for a second, then disappeared, swallowed by the darkness. I backed up faster. My first thought was Rachel, but that didn't make sense. She wouldn't be out here. She wouldn't be in the fields, standing in the dark, watching. My second thought, whoever sent that message. My third, whoever had tried to run me off the damn road. Another vibration in my pocket. I nearly dropped the phone trying to check, but the screen remained black. The battery was dead. How the hell was I still getting messages? I needed to move. Now, turning back toward the road, I forced my legs to move faster. I wasn't running yet, but I was close. The road was long, empty, stretching toward town like an unreachable promise. The nearest gas station was maybe a couple of miles ahead. If I could make it there, find someone, anyone, I could figure out what was happening. Another sound behind me, this time not a footstep. A voice. Faint. Low. Words I couldn't make out. My chest tightened. My hands curled into fists. I wasn't armed, wasn't ready for this, wasn't expecting to be out here, in the middle of the night, realizing that something was wrong in a way I didn't understand. I stole one last glance back. The phone screen was gone. The field was still. No movement. No sound. Just the feeling, the undeniable certainty that I wasn't alone. A car engine growled in the distance, and I turned toward the sound. Headlights crested over the hill ahead, bright against the empty stretch of road. I stepped forward, raising an arm, desperate for anything that wasn't silence or shadows or warnings from unknown numbers. The car slowed. A dark sedan. Not Rachel. Not the one that tried to hit me before. But it wasn't stopping either. It rolled past, and for a brief second, I saw the driver's face, a man in his 40s, eyes locked straight ahead, lips pressed together in something that wasn't quite indifference, wasn't quite fear. Then, as if realizing I had seen him, he sped up. My stomach twisted. He saw me. He knew I was here. He kept driving. The feeling in my gut turned ice cold. The town wasn't far, but if people were out here, if someone was watching, if whoever had sent that message was close enough to see me, then where the hell was I supposed to go? I took another step forward, then another, pushing down the panic rising in my chest. 1 mile to the gas station. 1 mile, and I could call for help. 1 mile, and I could be somewhere with people. I moved faster. Somewhere behind me, in the fields, something moved. Something was behind me. I didn't turn around. Turning around meant acknowledging it, meant stopping, meant risking that whatever was in those fields wasn't just watching anymore. I kept moving, faster, pushing my legs forward, trying to ignore the way the night air felt heavier, how the silence wasn't silence anymore, but something waiting to break. The gas station was close, a mile at most. I focused on that, on the light I knew would be there, on the promise of people, of noise, of normalcy. But my gut was tight, my pulse hammering against my ribs, because something was wrong in a way I couldn't explain. The car that nearly hit me. The message from a dead phone. The figure in the fields. None of it made sense, but all of it pointed to one thing. I wasn't supposed to be here. Another sound. Closer. Footsteps? No. Heavier. Like something pushing through the corn stalks. Slow, deliberate, testing how close it could get before I noticed. I did notice, but I didn't stop. I moved faster, my breath coming shorter, my muscles burning as the wind picked up around me, carrying the faint scent of something off, not rotten, not foul, just wrong. A car engine rumbled ahead. My chest tightened with relief as headlights appeared in the distance, coming toward me from the direction of town. I stepped into the middle of the road, waving both arms. Hey, stop. My voice sounded strange in the open air, too loud against the quiet, like it didn't belong here. The car kept coming, headlights glaring into my eyes, forcing me to squint. But it wasn't slowing down. Panic kicked in. I stepped back, waving again. Stop the car. The engine roared louder. The car wasn't stopping. I jumped to the side as the vehicle blew past me, the force of it knocking me off balance. I hit the gravel hard, the impact jolting up my side as the tires screeched against the road. I gasped, rolling to my hands and knees, dirt clinging to my palms. The taillights flickered ahead, brake lights flashing once before the car took off again, speeding away, leaving me behind. I sat there, breath heaving, the road spinning under me. My ears rang from the adrenaline, my body shaking. They saw me. They saw me and didn't stop. A soft vibration tickled against my leg. My phone. Dead. But I felt it. I yanked it from my pocket, staring at the dark screen. Then, a single flicker of light. A notification. One new message. Unknown number. Stop moving. Now. I dropped the phone. My body went cold. My limbs locked, my brain screaming at me to keep going, to run, to get away from whatever was happening, but my hands wouldn't move, my legs wouldn't push me forward. I stared at the message, at the dead phone that shouldn't be able to receive anything, at the empty road that had stopped feeling empty a long time ago. A sound behind me. Closer. I forced my body up, legs unsteady, hands clenched into fists. I turned. The cornfield wasn't empty. There was a figure standing at the edge of the stalks, just beyond the road, just close enough for me to see the outline of a person. Tall. Still. Watching. My breath came in sharp, uneven pulse, my heartbeat slamming against my ribs. My brain screamed at me to move, to run, but my body wouldn't listen. The figure took a step forward. I bolted. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just ran, feet slamming against the pavement, lungs burning as I pushed forward, eyes locked on the distance, on the gas station that had to be close. I didn't turn around. I didn't check to see if they were following. I didn't stop. The road stretched on, endless, and my legs ached, but I didn't slow. Not when my chest tightened. Not when my throat burned from sucking in air too fast. Not when the whisper of footsteps behind me turned into something heavier, something matching my pace. Light. Ahead. The gas station. I pushed harder, legs screaming in protest, arms pumping as the bright yellow glow of the station came into focus. It was open. It was real. A single car sat parked out front, an old truck, empty. But I didn't care about that. I cared about the light, the door, the promise of people. I reached the edge of the lot and stumbled, nearly falling onto the cracked pavement. My body begged me to stop, to collapse, but I forced myself forward, toward the entrance, toward safety. My fingers slammed against the door handle, yanking it open, and I stumbled inside, gasping. The attendant behind the counter barely looked up. A bored-looking guy in his early 20s, scrolling through his phone. Long night, he muttered without glancing at me. I couldn't speak. My lungs were still catching up, my body still trying to understand that I had made it, that I was inside, that the door was closed behind me. I turned to look through the glass. The road outside was empty. The cornfield was still. There was no one there. The gas station smelled like burnt coffee and stale cigarettes, a stark contrast to the cold, empty road behind me. The hum of an old refrigerator filled the silence, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My breath was still coming too fast, my chest tight from running, my hands gripping the edge of the counter as I forced myself to stay upright. The attendant glanced up, unimpressed, like he'd seen worse. Maybe he had. "You good, man?" His tone was flat, uninterested. He was scrolling through his phone, tapping lazily against the screen, barely looking at me. I turned toward the window again, my heart still hammering. The road was empty. The field was still. Nothing but darkness stretching beyond the glow of the station's flickering sign. But I knew what I saw. I knew what I heard. I swallowed, forcing my voice to steady. "Did you see anyone out there?" The guy raised an eyebrow, finally putting his phone down. "Like who?" I hesitated. Saying it out loud felt stupid. Saying that I saw someone standing in the cornfield, that I was being followed, that my phone, my dead phone, had been sending me messages. That someone tried to run me off the road. That no one in this town seemed to care. I exhaled, shaking my head. "Never mind. Can I use your phone?" He sighed, rubbing his face like I had just asked him to donate a kidney. "Nah, man. Store policy. No personal calls." My hands curled into fists. "It's an emergency." His expression didn't change. "Then use the payphone outside." I froze. Outside. The payphone was on the far end of the parking lot, right against the road. No cover. No protection. Wide open. I turned my head slightly, just enough to glance at the doors. The parking lot was empty. The truck was still there, abandoned. I hadn't seen anyone else since I walked in. No customers. No other cars passing by. Just the attendant and me. I wet my lips. "Whose truck is that?" The guy shrugged. "Dude's been parked there since my shift started." No idea where he went. I swallowed hard. Something was wrong. I could feel it pressing against my chest, the same way I felt it when I was on that road, when I was walking, when I knew I wasn't alone. The payphone was out there. I needed to make a call, but I also needed to make it back inside. I took a deep breath and pushed off the counter. "I'll be right back." The guy didn't care. He was already back on his phone. I stepped toward the doors, each movement feeling heavier than it should. The moment I pushed them open, the cold hit me again, sharp against my skin. The air smelled different out here. Not just gas fumes and asphalt. Something else. I forced myself forward, toward the payphone, my pulse quickening with every step. The silence was loud. No crickets. No wind. Even my own footsteps sounded wrong. I reached the phone, lifted the receiver, my fingers shaking as I dug into my pocket for coins. My mind was racing, my eyes flicking toward the field, the road, the truck, anything that might move. I dropped a quarter, cursing under my breath. It clinked against the pavement, rolling under the booth. I crouched down, reaching for it. A noise. I went still. The truck door. Slow. Deliberate. Opening. I didn't move. My breath caught in my throat. The payphone was still in my hand, the dial tone humming through the receiver. I forced myself to turn my head. The truck door was open now. Just slightly. Just enough. But no one stepped out. I swallowed, my throat dry. Hello? My voice came out quieter than I wanted. Nothing. I took a step back, gripping the phone in one hand, the quarter still in the other. The truck stayed still, the door opened just enough for darkness to pool inside. Then, the dome light flickered on. My stomach twisted. Someone was in there. Watching. Waiting. I slammed the receiver down, my body moving before my mind could catch up. I bolted for the station, my feet pounding against the pavement, my hands fumbling for the door handle. I yanked it open and rushed inside, slamming it shut behind me. The attendant barely looked up. I turned back to the window, my chest heaving. The truck was closed now. The door shut. The light off. Like nothing ever happened. The truck door had been open. I knew what I saw. I knew I wasn't imagining it. But now, it was shut again, like nothing had happened, like no one had ever been there. The sick feeling in my gut twisted tighter as I stood there, staring through the window, waiting for something, anything to move. But the parking lot remained still, the night pressing down around it, silent and heavy. The only sound was the quiet hum of the station's fluorescent lights and the lazy tapping of the attendant's fingers against his phone. I turned back toward him, my pulse still hammering, my skin cold. You're seriously telling me you didn't see that? My voice was sharp, almost accusing, but I didn't care. I needed someone, anyone, to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. The guy exhaled through his nose, barely glancing up. See what? The truck. The damn door was open. The light was on. He blinked at me, unimpressed. Maybe the wind caught it. I clenched my jaw, my hands tightening into fists at my sides. The wind? There was no wind. Not a single gust. Not even a breeze. And even if there had been, the way that door opened, slow, deliberate, had nothing to do with the wind. I took a step toward the counter, lowering my voice. Someone's out there. The attendant finally put his phone down, his gaze shifting to the window for the first time. He looked for all of 2 seconds before shrugging. Don't see anyone. I felt my patience snap, my nerves raw and exposed. Are you serious? Do you even care? His expression barely changed. Dude, I work nights at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. I stopped caring about weirdos a long time ago. I stared at him, trying to decide if he was just that oblivious or if something was actually wrong with him. His disinterest wasn't normal. It wasn't just apathy, it was like he was intentionally ignoring what was happening. I turned back to the window again, my gut telling me to leave. I had to get out of here, away from this station, away from whatever was happening outside. I didn't care where. I just needed to move. Then the door chimed. I froze. Not the door I had just come through. The other one, the side entrance, the one by the restrooms. The one I hadn't even noticed. The attendant barely reacted, glancing up lazily, his face bathed in the dull glow of the counter light. His eyes flickered to the door for a split second before he shrugged and went back to his phone. Like someone walking in at this hour was normal. Like I wasn't standing here, rattled and out of breath, telling him that something was wrong. I forced myself to turn around, my muscles locked, my breath shallow. The side door swung shut with a soft click. Someone had just come inside. The store was small. A few aisles. A single register. The coolers humming along the back wall. No blind spots. I should have seen them. But the space was empty. No footsteps. No shifting shadows. No movement at all. I stepped back, my skin crawling. Who the hell just walked in? The attendant exhaled, like he was already sick of me. You're jumpy as hell, man. He gestured toward the aisles, barely looking. If you're that paranoid, check for yourself. I didn't want to check. I didn't want to move at all. But standing still wasn't an option. I turned toward the aisles, my hands tightening into fists, forcing myself to look. I moved slowly, my footsteps muffled against the old tile floor. I scanned the shelves, my pulse hammering against my ribs. The rows were empty. No customers. No movement. Then, from the back of the store, a soft creak. I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat. The bathroom door was slightly open, the dim glow from inside spilling onto the floor. It had been closed before. I was sure of it. I took a step closer, my body rigid. My mind screamed at me to stop, to turn around, to walk the hell out of this station and never look back. But my body ignored the warning. I reached out, my fingers hovering over the edge of the door. Then, the light inside flickered out. I yanked my hand back, my stomach flipping. Someone was in there. I turned on my heel, heading straight for the exit, my only thought to get out, now? But before I could reach the doors, the bathroom door creaked open the rest of the way, slow and steady. I didn't turn around. I didn't look. I didn't want to see who, or what, had been standing behind that door. The air in the store felt heavier now, the space around me closing in. I reached for the handle, pulling at it, but it didn't budge. The door was locked. I slammed my fist against the glass, panic rising in my throat. Hey, what the hell? The attendant finally looked up again, his expression blank. Doors auto-lock after a certain time. Then unlock it. My voice was tight, barely controlled. He tilted his head. Why? I stared at him, my breath coming fast, my chest heaving. His face was too calm, too flat, too wrong. He wasn't just ignoring what was happening. He was part of it. I turned back to the aisles, to the bathroom, to the dark space behind me. I wasn't alone in here. I knew that now. Something was coming. The air inside the station had changed. It wasn't just still, it was weighted, pressing against my skin, thick in my throat. The bathroom door was fully open now, but nothing moved inside. The side door had chimed, but no one stood in the aisles. The only other person in this building was the attendant, and he wasn't acting like someone who had just seen something unusual. He wasn't reacting at all. He stood behind the counter, shoulders relaxed, fingers lazily tapping his phone like he hadn't just watched me panic. Like the locked doors didn't mean anything. Like I wasn't supposed to leave. I clenched my fists, my pulse hammering. Open the damn door. The attendant sighed, finally setting his phone down. Relax, man. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I stepped forward, keeping my voice steady even though my body was anything but. Nothing? Someone just came in here, and now they're gone. My car broke down, my phone is dead, and something was following me before I even got here. You don't think that's worth giving a shit about? His expression didn't change. You're overreacting. Then unlock the door. His fingers hovered over the register, like he was considering it, but he didn't move. He just stood there, watching me. A noise behind me. Not footsteps. Not the sound of something shifting on the shelves. Something low, unnatural, like air being sucked out of the room. The kind of sound that didn't belong. My body stiffened, the muscles in my back locking up. I wanted to turn around. I needed to turn around. But something told me I wouldn't like what I saw. The attendant exhaled through his nose, almost bored. You can feel it, can't you? The words stopped me cold. Slowly, I turned to face him. His expression had changed. The indifference was still there, but now there was something else beneath it, understanding. He wasn't confused. He wasn't oblivious. He knew what was happening. I took a step back. What the hell is going on? The humming from the coolers grew louder. The lights above flickered once, then twice, casting quick shadows across the room. The weight in the air thickened. It felt like the entire station was waiting. The attendant leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the counter. You shouldn't have left your car. A shiver crawled up my spine. The way he said it, not as a warning, not as advice, but as a fact, like it had already been decided. Like there was nothing I could do about it now. My breath caught. Why? He tilted his head slightly. Because now you're in here. A slow creak came from the back of the store. I didn't turn around this time. I didn't need to. I could feel it. The space behind me wasn't empty anymore. I moved toward the door again, gripping the handle, yanking at it even though I knew it wouldn't open. The metal was ice cold against my palms, colder than it should have been. The humming in the store grew louder. My skin burned with the sensation of being watched. I wasn't alone. The attendant sighed again, like this was exhausting for him, like I was just wasting time. You should sit down. I shook my head, my fingers still wrapped tight around the door handle. Open the door. You really don't get it, do you? He almost smiled. It's not about the door. The humming reached a peak, rattling through the store like something vibrating beneath the floors. The lights flickered so hard it left trails in my vision. I clenched my teeth, swallowing the panic climbing up my throat. Let me out. The attendant leaned back, folding his arms. You were always going to end up here. The lights cut out. The room went completely dark, and behind me, something breathed. The darkness swallowed everything. The humming from the coolers stopped. The faint buzz of the flickering lights gone. The weight in the air didn't just press down anymore. It wrapped around me, pulling tight against my skin. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then, behind me, something shifted. Not footsteps. Not movement on the shelves. Something deeper. A presence. Close. Too close. The air around me felt thicker, like something had just stepped into it, into my space, like it had always been there, waiting for the moment when I would finally notice. I clenched my jaw, my hands still wrapped around the frozen metal of the door handle. My pulse pounded against my skull, my breath tight in my chest. The darkness wasn't just a lack of light, it was something alive, stretching through the room, filling the gaps between the aisles, pressing into every space except where the attendant stood. I swallowed, forcing my voice out through gritted teeth. Turn the lights back on. The attendant didn't respond. I couldn't see him anymore, but I knew he was there. I could feel his presence, still as ever, standing behind the counter like he was watching this happen, like he had seen it before. The breath behind me came again. Closer this time. Slow, deliberate. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cold. It wasn't human. My entire body screamed at me to move, but I couldn't. The darkness pressed against my back like a solid wall, keeping me frozen in place. My fingers dug into the door handle, the cold searing into my palms. I had to get out. Then, a voice. Not from the attendant. Not from anyone I could see. Low. Flat. Like a whisper pulled through a broken radio. You shouldn't be here. My throat locked. My nails bit into the metal of the door handle. The voice wasn't just behind me. It was around me. Everywhere. Inside the walls. Inside my head. I swallowed down the panic. Then let me leave. Silence. Then, you already made your choice. A flicker. The lights came back, dim and unsteady, casting long, fractured shadows across the store. The cold drained from my hands. My breath rushed back into my lungs like I had been underwater for too long. The weight in the air lifted, but not completely. It was still there, hovering just at the edges of the room, just beyond the reach of the fluorescent glow. I spun around. Nothing. The aisles were empty. The bathroom door was open, but the light inside was back on. No figures. No movement. Just the quiet hum of the coolers, as if nothing had ever happened. I turned toward the counter. The attendant was still standing there, arms folded, watching me with the same unreadable expression, like he had been waiting for me to see. I took a shaky step forward. What the hell was that? He didn't blink. You felt it, didn't you? A slow, deep chill crawled up my spine. The way he said it, like he knew exactly what I had just experienced. Like he had expected it. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my breathing. What the hell is going on in this place? The attendant sighed, leaning against the counter. It's not the place. His eyes flickered toward me, sharp, knowing. It's you. My stomach twisted. What? He gestured toward the locked doors. You were on that road too long. You left your car. You left your spot. And now he trailed off, shrugging. I stared at him, my skin burning with frustration, confusion, and something worse, understanding. A part of me already knew. I had felt it from the moment my car died. From the moment Rachel didn't answer. From the moment I realized I was alone. I shook my head, forcing myself to focus. I just want to get out of here. The attendant nodded slowly, as if considering something. Then, he reached under the counter and pulled out a single key. It was small, worn, the kind of key that didn't fit a normal door. He placed it on the counter between us. I didn't move. He tilted his head. If you really want to leave, take it. I glanced between him and the key, every nerve in my body telling me that this wasn't right. None of this was right. But I needed to get out. I reached forward, my fingers hovering just over the metal. Then the lights flickered again. And from behind me, in the reflection of the cooler doors, something moved. The reflection in the cooler door twisted, just for a second, like something had passed between me and the glass. My breath locked in my throat, every muscle in my body coiling tight. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My fingers hovered above the key, my pulse hammering so hard I could hear it. The attendant still stood behind the counter, unmoved, watching me with that same measured expression, like none of this was surprising. Like he had seen this happen before. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice steady. What happens if I take the key? The attendant exhaled through his nose, considering me. You leave. Something in his tone made my skin crawl. It was too simple, too final. My fingertips brushed the cold metal of the key, and behind me, the reflection in the cooler moved again. Not a flicker this time. A deliberate shift. A shape, just out of focus, standing where no one should be. Close. I gritted my teeth. And if I don't? The attendant tilted his head slightly. Then you stay. A cold weight settled in my stomach. He wasn't talking about the store. He wasn't talking about the gas station or the road or anywhere I could name. The lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to send shadows twitching across the floor. My fingers curled into my palm, pulling away from the key. Behind me, the cooler doors creaked open. I spun around so fast my vision blurred. The glass door had swung outward just slightly, just enough for the cool air inside to slip out, fogging against the warmth of the store. I took a step back. The rows of drinks sat undisturbed, perfectly arranged. But the reflection in the glass, it wasn't mine anymore. It stood in my place, just a little off, its head tilted at the wrong angle, its shoulders hunched like they were waiting. My breath hitched. It wasn't Rachel. It wasn't the attendant. It wasn't anyone I knew. But it was me. The humming from the coolers deepened. The reflection's head twitched again, like it was adjusting, testing, waiting for me to notice that it was no longer following my movements. I stepped back. It didn't. A sharp breath left my lungs. What the hell is this? The attendant's voice was steady, calm. It's time to choose. My hands curled into fists. Choose what? The reflection's head snapped forward. Eyes locked on mine. It smiled. My stomach twisted. I grabbed the key off the counter, gripping it so hard the edges bit into my palm. The second I did, the reflection's mouth dropped open. Too wide. Too wrong. My own breath caught, like I had been winded, like the thing in the glass had stolen the air straight from my lungs. The lights above flared. The coolers rattled. And the reflection took a step out. I didn't wait. I turned, lunged for the door, shoved the key into the lock. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. The reflection was right behind me, its breath in my ear, its fingers reaching. The key turned. The door unlocked. I wrenched it open and ran. The moment my foot hit the pavement outside, the air shifted. The weight disappeared. The buzzing, the humming, the pressure on my chest, gone. I stumbled forward, my breath ragged, my vision blurring for half a second as the night air hit my face. I turned back toward the gas station, expecting, I don't know what. But the store was empty. The lights were dim again. The counter was unmanned. The coolers were shut. The attendant was gone. And there was no reflection in the glass. I staggered back, my chest heaving. My car was still dead on the road. My phone was still useless. But I didn't care. I just started walking. And I didn't stop.